Good morning. The Conservative Party leader contender, Dr. Kellie Leitch, recently sent a survey to the people from whom she expects votes, her supposed supporters, and the survey contained a question. The question was such which apparently looks to be very innocent and very innocuous. But this question has raised hackles among the establishment, among the Liberal Party, and this stirring up of the hornet's nest does create apprehensions in the minds of the people. The question was, should the immigrants be screened for their knowledge of Canadian values or not? Now, looking at it, it's a very innocent question, as I said, and a very innocuous one. After all, when you want to immigrate to a new country, you should know the ethos of that country. You should know the working culture of that country. What's wrong with that? The Canadians, wherever they are, whatever they are, always pride themselves on the Canadian values. So if Dr. Leitch asks the question, should the immigrants be screened for their knowledge of Canadian values or not, what's wrong with that? And yet, the press, the TV, the electronic media, the social media has been fighting like dogs in heat as to why this question be raised. If Canadian values are that controversial a topic, why is it that every day we Canadians talk of our values? We Canadians and the world outside talks of the Canadian values. The question arises, A, what are those Canadian values? B, why this dispute or this debate about the knowledge of Canadian values? As far as the Canadian values are concerned, the leader of the country, Justin Trudeau, keeps on talking of the Canadian values, and one most important Canadian value he always stresses is mutual respect. And nothing wrong with that. So if the immigrants are asked a question, do you believe in mutual respect? You can be sure the response is 99.9999% going to be yes. So what's controversial about it? But is mutual respect the only Canadian value? The Canadian values have been listed in the Charter. And this is a charter which everybody talks about and brags about. This is a charter which the Supreme Court takes to be a beacon light by which to frame its responses to the questions of legality, constitutionality, acceptability of the laws and the actions. This is a charter which has been used and misused. This is a charter on which the Canadians take a pride on themselves. And the charter says very clearly, A, the supremacy of God and the rule of law. Now, supremacy of God would not be challenged by anybody who believes in God. But all the atheists, and there are about 33% of them, do not believe in supremacy of God. And then, when the Constitution and the Charter was framed, these were the Christian people. Would they have used God if 5% of the population had been Muslim or 5% had been Hindu or Jewish, Jewish might have accepted God, but Muslims would never have accepted God. They would have wanted Allah to be the supreme. Though there is no difference. And yet, for example, in Malaysia, a non-Muslim cannot use the name of Allah. It's a sacrilege. So, the supremacy of God would have been changed to supremacy of Allah. And the die-hard non-Muslims would have objected to that. Okay, for the sake of argument, you accept that there is no difference, so supremacy of God is acceptable even to the atheists like me. So if the question is asked from the immigrants, do you believe in the supremacy of Allah? What is there to crib about? Accept the fact that you as a person belonging to another religion may not like the use of the word God. But there is nothing sacrosanct about using X word or Y word. The second is rule of law. Now the law is the law passed by the parliament in consonance with the charter, which has not been declared to be illegal by the courts. And the supremacy of law is great because then everybody is equal. The rule of law goes further down and says there shall be no discrimination based on sex, color, religion, creed, gender, and so on. Which one of them is objectionable? Naturally, those people who believe in honor killing, those people who believe in female feticide so that they can have only boy progeny, male progeny rather than a female progeny, would object to that. But normal human beings would always say, yes, everybody is equal. Everybody is equal before law. And the rule of law is something which protects us from anarchy. Now, if that is so, why is this debate about? And then, we always say, treat your neighbor, love your neighbor as thyself, one of the 10 commandments. Again, what you're doing and asking the refugees to come, the milk of human kindness that springs eternal in the breasts of the Canadians, that's a Canadian value. Care, that's a Canadian value. Respect, care, consideration, these are the Canadian values. Now, if Dr. Leitch says that the immigrant should A, have knowledge of this, and B, should abide by these values, what are we debating about? Here comes in the duplicity of the politicians. They will say, talk of the Canadian values, but being politically correct, they would not talk of God lest it should irritate those who want to label God as Allah or God as Bhagwan or Ishwar or Vaheguru. These are the people who threw out the Christmas tree from the Brampton court because it might hurt the non-Christians. These were the people who changed Merry Christmas to Happy Holidays. Though stupid that is, the very greeting is idiotic. But that's what they did. They do not have the courage of their conviction. They talk of the values and they devalue those values. When we take everybody is equal, then why the special consideration to one group that they are permitted to pray during the school hours, even in secular schools, the government schools, the public school system? Why should the rule of law not be applicable? If a dress code is there, why be permitted anybody, whether it's a Muslim or a Sikh, to violate it? We do not permit a child to take a knife to the school, but a Sikh student can take a kirpan to the school. Why this anomaly? Now, if the immigrant is aware of the values and the systems, and he says during the application process that he will abide by them, that will knock the bottom out of their protests later on. Now, another interesting thing came up. That was the oath of loyalty. It's very clearly said that the Queen is the head of the state. And Queen and her heirs, that the Charles and William and so on. And yet some people refuse to take the oath, saying that she's a foreign queen. They forgot that she is Queen of Canada. And you are taking oath to the Queen of Canada, not to the Queen of England. It's an accident of history that the same person happens to be the Queen of 21 countries. But the Canadian values are rule of law. And the rule of law says that the head of the state is Her Majesty the Queen. And when you take away and you protest against that, later on, after having immigrated, then if you have taken that test and you have affirmed your faith, then refusal to take oath is a breach of contract. And the breach of contract should have its own repercussions. So these Canadian values, which we all pay lip service to, are sought to be a feature of everyday conduct by Kellie Leitch. Now, I'm no supporter of Kellie Leitch. I'm quite neutral and I do not care who becomes the leader. As long as the leader is a person committed to the good of the people. That's my only concentration. But my objection is to the detractors of Dr. Kellie Leitch. They are criticizing her not because Kellie Leitch has propagated it, because essentially they violate the Canadian values in their everyday conduct. They say that everybody is equal, but some people are more equal than others are. And that is the base of the debate and the base of the fight. Canadian values are such which no sane person would object to. They are very human values. They are human and humane. So, asking the new immigrants to show their knowledge of the Canadian values and also to show their acceptance of those Canadian values is something which is a given of any human being, not only of the prospective immigrant. Because these are the values which should be a part and parcel of the psyche of every human being. Why not take care of the needy? Why not take care of the others? Why not have mutual respect? Why not have adherence to the rule of law? Why let the religion or the color separate one from the other? Why not care? Why not be considerate? Why not be human? Now, the fight about this and what he said Mutual trust. How can you have mutual trust when somebody is different than the others are? And mutual trust is not a part of the Canadian values as far as the Charter goes. Now again there is an anomaly. On the one side we say that the Charter is of supreme, and yet we are afraid of using the word God. If we could have it, the Lord's Prayer has been thrown out at many places. And what's Lord's Prayer? This is a prayer to the Almighty, to the God. I may believe or I may not believe, but that's what the Charter is. The supremacy of God. And that supremacy of God, these detractors have denigrated by A, throwing out the Lord's Prayer from the schools, B, by objecting to Kellie Leitch's very innocuous but really provocative questioning. Now, provocative it is because it exposes the duplicity and the hypocrisy of those people who shout from their rooftops their reverence for, their love for, their respect for the Canadian values. But the moment the time comes for adhering to them, they are the first to run away with their tail between their legs. My issue is, be honest. And either you accept a thing or you don't. First, it's to the leaders to tell us whether they accept the Canadian values or not. And if they do not, let them quit the public life. I would not say Canada, but quit the public life and become average human being, not to sway the lives of others. If that is done, then they have a right to criticize. But I think it is the high time that Dr. Kellie Leitch's suggestion, or it's not a suggestion, it's a question, is asking for the people to let her know so that she can frame her manifesto accordingly. But if it was left to me, I would make it obligatory for all immigrants not only to show their knowledge of the Canadian values, but also to give an affidavit saying that they adhere to the Canadian values. And in case they show any deviance, they shall be automatically stand deprived of the Canadian citizenship. This is the least that should be done. And there can be no argument about that. Do you agree? I'm sure you do. Okay. Have a great time and a good day. Bye.